I think everybody is signed in, and if they're not, they can just join us when they get here. Hi, everybody. My name is Amy, and I am with GrowthZone Association Management Software. Thank you for joining us today. And of course, we are thrilled to have Association risk expert Brian Haney with us. One of my Brian's waving. Hey, Brian. One of my responsibilities is managing the GrowthZone social media presence. We are on all the major social media platforms, and we work hard to provide relevant resources for associations and chambers without self-promotion. So whether it's blog posts, articles by industry experts, research papers, if it's helpful to membership professionals, we put it out there. All right, I'm switching here. Just quickly, hi to all of our customers. We, again, are excited to have you here. For those of you not familiar with GrowthZone, I encourage you to join us for an online group demo to see how our association membership management software works. You can take a look at it in action. So you can go to growthzone.com, and the sign up button is just right there on the home page. And I will also try to share the link in the chat section. I'm just popping all around here. All right, so the webinar is being recorded. Everyone who registered will receive the recording via the email address you used to sign up. So regardless of whether or not someone joins us live, that all registrants are going to receive the recording, including a link to the slide deck. So hopefully that should land in your inbox in the next 24 hours. As we move through the presentation, you can feel free to use the questions pane for questions and comments. You can send your questions in at any time during the presentation. If there's time, we're going to have a Q&A session at the end, and Brian will answer what he can. Any questions that we don't get to, we will send to Brian, and he will follow up via email or with a document we'll send out. So send those questions in. If we don't get to them, we will get to them eventually and get that into your inbox. So that being said, Brian Haney, he is a CAE, Certified Association Executive, and is actively involved in ASAE, to say the very least. He serves on the Foundation Development and the Diversity and Inclusion Committees. He is a Washington Business Journal 40 Under 40 Award recipient. He's the immediate past president of the National Association of Insurance Financial Advisors, the vice president and a board member of the Capital Area Gay and Lesbian Chamber, and is an advisor and board member for Critters for the Cure. So he keeps busy. Brian has written a lot of articles. You can find a lot of them within the Associations Now magazine. And he covers a wide variety of topics. So they're in Association Now and a lot of other publications. His latest book, or his newest book maybe, was released this summer, and you can find in June, and you can find that on Amazon. He also hosts an entertaining podcast. I actually really enjoy it. It's geared towards membership organizations, but really it's a great listen for everybody, in my opinion. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it off to Brian, and let's get going. Hopefully.
Thank you so much, Amy. And a big thank you to GrowthZone. I love working with them and I love what they do. So hopefully you're here in no small part just because they put out a lot of good material, content, but they are an extremely valuable provider, partner, and they just do some amazing things. So thank you very much for the opportunity. This is a topic I'm excited to talk about because I think it's no secret, all of us in Zoom land are experiencing a continued pandemic that's having a myriad of impacts. So just being able to walk through this and then get down to something that I'm passionate about, and also we as a company spend a great deal of time trying to help our membership organization clients and partners explore. So I'm going to go relatively paced. So please, as Amy mentioned, if there are questions or if there are things that you want to make sure I can see and get to, do use that chat function or the question and answer function, so I can. I may not be able to stop in the middle of things, but I will do the best that I possibly can to leave plenty of margin at the end for some engagement. So I'm just by nature, I go high level to kind of very granular. So that's kind of the flow for today. And I'm also going to make sure that we level set and talk about things that probably a lot of us understand, but there's a method to the madness. It's important, I think, for us to have this type of a conversation, especially as we get into how this all relates to membership engagement, affinity plans, etc. So we're certainly going to cover, we're going to go high, low, wide, deep, and granular. All right, let's start. Hopefully you're here and you're not feeling too much stress. But we've been in a pandemic since the beginning of the year, February, March. And a lot of us are still trying to adapt to that virtual environment. While some were probably more virtually capable than others, the prolonged experience of having to work remotely and also really not getting that same level of human interaction that I think a lot of people realized how valuable it was until it was taken away. So, this has gone well for some, but it's been challenging for others. And that's something that is important for us to be aware of. Zoom fatigue is a real thing. So just how are we all operating and adapting in a virtual environment? And also the fact that the virtual work dynamic is not an equitable one. Not every single industry can adapt to a virtualization dynamic. And certainly from a membership standpoint, if we're a chamber of commerce or if we're a professional association representing a particular trade that is a lot more hands-on, this is going to be a different consideration. So, we really do want to be thoughtful of not just how we're kind of digesting this, but how our collective friends, family, neighbors, community, clients, members, right? Job stability and financial security are things that I think we all understand are continuing to be hot button items. Hopefully, despite some macro level economic numbers that actually seem to point to slight improvements or maybe lesser negative numbers than expected, we're still seeing with over 11 million people unemployed. We have a lot of work to do to move forward as a nation. And the relational impact as well as the educational impact, I think, are other things that we need to continue to recognize. Unfortunately, we've seen things from, not just the appropriate components of protest and social justice, but things between neighbors, things in families, an increase in domestic violence. There's a lot of strain on relationships in a variety of ways. I want to be aware of that. And the educational experience, especially with so many children now experiencing virtual school and schooling from home, which maybe back in March and April when school was winding down and it was kind of being forced into that probably seemed a lot different than it does now with the prospect of having a significant portion of the school year done this way. I know I've heard from just many friends, family, parents, et cetera, people in our spheres that it's not as easy as it felt back then. So hopefully we're all adapting to this, but just these are components, again, at a macro level that may be playing a role and probably coming to the table in some of this membership type of conversation. And let's get it more close to home, right? How, as membership organizations, whether you're a chamber, what kind of businesses are in your respective sphere, or certainly if you're an association representing an industry, as the industry hurts, and that also tends to mean that there can be a significant impact to the same association as well. So whether it's tightening the proverbial financial belt, whether any of us have had to have layoffs, furloughs, or are at least in a place where, depending on how things play out in the next 6, 8 to 12 months, maybe those things, may be on the horizon. These are all things that we're going to have to be dealing with to some degree or another. The forced virtualization for membership organizations. I think the first thing that we always focus on, since we do a little bit of in the insurance realm, is, how prepared were you to have a remote working environment if that wasn't already the case? And did you have the cyber security protocols in place? And was everybody able to feel like they could accomplish things in a safe way? Maybe if you had folks that were using their computers through your working environment, but now they're using personal devices. How has that gone? And just are we continuing to experience the optimal work dynamic? If the proverbial 9 to 5 is definitely not what I think most of us are going through. And how are we dealing with the potential for membership decline, since with the financial belt tightening, people are looking at every expense. And in some situations, a membership to an organization or association or a chamber may not make the cut anymore, especially if they're looking at that or looking at paying some employees. So it's a challenging moment. And certainly a lot of us have had to potentially move from a regular in-person event to a virtual environment, and that can jeopardize event revenues, especially if you have significant vendors that are used to coming out and having an in-person. Not all of that translates to the virtual space, and just being able to recognize that. And I think the bottom line that I add all of this up to, I think that this really means the member value proposition is certainly something that I hope we're all considering, and could potentially be in jeopardy depending on how well we've adapted and how well we adjust, and potentially how well we respond and react. So let's get down to the next level and think about our members. What do people really need right now? And no, it's probably not a lot of the stuff that fits a great membership brochure. People need empathy, more now, maybe more than ever before. As this continues to go on, I think more and more these unfelt, unexpressed stress needs are going to become more felt and more pronounced and more significant. And any way that we can be empathetic to those that are members or are in our sphere of influence, I think we want to try to do that. How can we as organizations, as membership organizations, demonstrate care and understanding? What can that mean? What can that look like practically, so that it doesn't come across the wrong way, but it does land well, and people really do feel it in the way that I think we intend to when we're trying to do that? What kind of guidance and direction can we provide right now? Whether it's within our particular sphere, or whether we need to kind of go outside or bring other parties in to help members because it is outside our wheelhouse, but maybe we have the capacity to do that on their behalf. People definitely need help with their professional lives. I mean, as we've kind of already covered that before, a lot of people are struggling in this area. And especially if you're a small business owner, regardless of the industry, you're trying to really figure some things out if you hadn't been able to figure it out already. And a lot of people are raising hands and needing help. So this is a great opportunity to show how helpful you can be. And absolutely understand this, that while it probably was hard or not even something we would consider before now, being able to help somebody on a personal level matters. And being able to do that in the right way matters too. So we can talk about that a little bit more. How can you win? With every challenge or obstacle comes an opportunity. And so I think, as I mentioned before, now is a great opportunity to demonstrate care and to let people know that you care without any kind of hooks into it, without I care, but I want to also talk to you about why this membership relationship is really great, right? With no preconceptions. Let's have a paradigm shift and put our audience first and really find a meaningful way to make an impact that may or may not tie directly back to that membership or to a sale or to a revenue piece. Because, use the MasterCard analogy, right? Sometimes caring for someone can be priceless and invaluable. I think really the associations and the organizations and the membership groups that will win the most and win for the longest term are those that can really listen. Now is an exceptional time to sharpen our listening skills, to hear people and allow them the space to express things, not just, the first answer, but to drill down and allow them to be a little bit more transparent, potentially a little bit more vulnerable, right? And really connect and meet them where they are. Let's be very aware that we don't want to assume we know, because especially in this kind of environment, go in, take the Columbo approach and pretend you don't know, ask a ton of questions, and really find out so that way you can connect meaningfully. And now is certainly optimal time to find ways to have two-way engaging conversations. Make this a collaborative experience. If I'm showing you that I'm a membership organization that really cares and I care about you, not just about the membership relationship, and I want to find a way to help as an organization, I want to extend my virtual arm and put it around your shoulder and walk through this together, how can we do that in a collaborative way? I think this is a great opportunity to not just collaborate with your members, but also collaborate with industry partners, collaborate with vendors. Let's all get together and figure out how we can find ways to win. Now is the time to be doing that. What changes might we need to consider or have already undergone? I think the first thing is we all need to step outside our comfort zone. This pandemic is, the word is like 3 times a day being batted about. It's unprecedented. Well, if things are unprecedented, that to me, we need to, that drops all the walls of our comfort zone. We need to figure things out and maybe look at things in just a completely brand new way, or maybe it's just getting a different view on the same thing. But whatever it is, be comfortable becoming uncomfortable. I absolutely would encourage organizations to not feel the need that you need to double down and reinforce your membership value proposition for fear of losing members. Don't talk about yourself. Or if there's a way for you to talk about that membership experience and why there is value, do it in that caring, empathetic, coming alongside you way, not in a, I need to make sure that everybody knows why they decided to be a member and why it's probably good and you don't want to drop your member. We really want to find a way to, if we have to talk about ourselves, doing it in an effective, appropriate way, not necessarily thumping our chests just because we're scared about losing members. When members are down, can we lift them up? Obviously, if we're not already maximizing our digital social media presence, then that's got to be a high priority. And I think social media isn't just about, again, kind of, showing yourself or showing up. That's a great space to be having some of these conversations. That's a great opportunity to be putting out provoking content that invites people to have a conversation or to ask the right questions and just let members talk. I think this is also a great opportunity to host town halls. I've been a part of several organizations and seen several others do this very effectively, where essentially the association wasn't doing anything other than acting in the role of a facilitator and bringing people to help members that that were outside of their sphere or outside of their wheelhouse, but they recognized the need to equip and care for people, and that's what they were doing. That was the focus. And I know for a fact that those were very effective and helpful, and they felt differently from a member value standpoint. So how can we really find a way to dig in and deliver value where it's needed most? Does that mean that we had to change our value proposition? Maybe, I don't know. But that's the conversation. That's where we're at. Do we need to consider, shifting in-person revenue to a virtual environment? What does that look like? Because as I mentioned earlier, especially maybe you've had some really successful in-person meetings, and certainly I think we all hope and know in-person meetings will come back, I hope. and so, this may be a very, very, if not somewhat prolonged temporary dynamic. But, the virtual environment will continue to be and should be a part of that engagement. So, how do you not just help members experience that well? How do you also talk to your vendors and to your partners, not all of whom may have the same success or engagement opportunities in a virtual environment? Insurance is a great example, or just talking about financial things in general. You know, that's not something that you can set up kind of a virtual, hey, let's walk through and try out your insurance policy and see how it looks online. It's, you know, that's kind of not how that works. So what would be valuable? Maybe if somebody had a booth, but maybe now what looks like a win to them is, hey, you know, I'd rather just have an educational workshop where I had a chance to demonstrate I'm a subject matter expert and engage with members that way. Maybe that's better for me than trying to have some sort of a virtual ad space or a paid space or something like that. So what represents a win for your members, for your vendors, for your partners, and be open-minded with them and make it, again, that word collaborative, make it a partnership. People appreciate when you're trying to figure out how to get them to win more than just asking them for money or asking them to be a part of things because you still have so many members that they can try to reach, right? Be collaborative, because that will solidify that value proposition in that relationship over the long term in ways that, you know, you probably can't measure. And now everybody needs to recognize, we all need to recognize that the pandemic pains are creating urgency, and how can we capitalize on that? Unrealized pain is now most definitely realized, right? So big examples, right? The need for financial wellness and freedom, and frankly, financial responsibility and fiscalness. Unfortunately, the pandemic has certainly exposed a lot. Mental health, physical health, financial health, anything with the word health has clearly been impacted, right? And that, again, is something that, even if that's not in our wheelhouse, that can still be something we can take advantage of or find a way to have an impact, right? Whether it's, you know, obviously, whether it's educational, maybe there's an affinity opportunity, but let's, you know, being aware that there are some pains that people are experiencing that perhaps in the past didn't make it all the way up to the surface, or just, you know, were things that people just didn't want to talk about. Well, now a lot of people are talking about them. And also helping members or businesses or organizations adapt to that virtual environment and increase their exposure. You know, there might be very successful selling organizations, but maybe they're crippled, not because they shouldn't be able to continue that selling success, but they don't know how to do it virtually. Maybe there's an opportunity there to help members of a chamber or you know, professional organization say, okay, you know, hey, Jewelers of America, you know, people aren't necessarily coming in. What do we need to do? Because people probably still want to buy nice things, and you know, people are still getting married. I've seen some pretty cool things, and you know, the pandemic type of weddings and all that kind of stuff. How do we do things? How do we have a different conversation? How do we go to a virtual environment if people aren't going to be coming into a store, right? What does this look like? And if financial belt tightening is happening for all of us, how can we help with that? And the bottom line, and this is certainly the exciting part for us as a practice that does a lot of this, insurance is no longer a necessary evil, even if it still feels that way, but it's a critical survival tool. And that's something that I hope, I feel like I need to say that 5 times, because that's so important and so powerful. As anybody on this Zoom experience who has had to go through trying to have a claim for event cancellation knows, right? All right. So do we just get new life for affinity opportunities? And I am going to zero in on insurance, although all of us understand that's not, you know, the totality of what can mean, you know, what an affinity program can mean. But let's talk about the things that the pandemic has clearly heightened, you know, the general awareness. Business interruption, right? If you didn't have this, or you did and you didn't really know how to go through that claims experience, this is on everybody's mind. And you know, maybe creating a significant opportunity, or at least something that, you know, if a lot of people are experiencing one thing and there's one pain and one issue, maybe a great opportunity, or at least an opportunity to have a conversation or bring parties to the table. Cyber, you know, now we didn't need the pandemic to realize that we were already in a digital world, but it has absolutely reinforced that 100-fold, especially if any of us have struggled on a Zoom call because our Wi-Fi is getting strained, because guess what? Now everybody's on the, you know, the Wi-Fi band. So I guess 5G and 6G and whatever's next can't get here fast enough. But, you know, membership organizations, or, you know, people that had a workspace and maybe work computers that are now working remotely on devices that aren't necessarily as protected, or didn't have a procedure for this. This is really exposing a lot. And oh, by the way, cybercrime has almost tripled since March. So, where there's more people online, there's also more opportunities for theft, exposure, et cetera. So certainly something that, frankly, I think cyber is no longer an industry heavy thing. I think everybody has now recognized there's probably some level of consideration or concern. And certainly if you're in a virtual environment, there is. So looking at that. Life and disability insurance, things that even in the insurance world, people don't necessarily like to talk about. But now, not just because we're seeing mortality numbers, I think we're recognizing, though, like you said, the value of health. And what type of a conversation does that mean, especially if you've been exposed financially and you're concerned if something happens to you? Maybe now might really be the time to address some of these things that, were kind of nice to have. Well, now they're must-haves. And maybe you can help with that conversation, or maybe even move the needle by being able to provide something. And yes, even though it sounds interesting, funny, cliche, maybe even pet insurance, because darn it, if there aren't enough people, it's great. Actually, pet adoptions are at a record high, which is wonderful, because now that more of us are shut in, we realize that maybe the missing thing is an animal that either poops inside or outside. So yes, pet insurance, it could be something we could talk about. How do you capitalize? If as I was saying earlier, this collaborative thing, coming alongside caring, get a real pulse of your membership. Now is a great time, whether it's in the form of an actual survey, or focus groups, really engaging with committees. However you're structured, whatever's going to give you the most in-depth understanding of where your members are. If you're not already doing it, continue to do it, but really see and see it from the lens of not just the traditional way that you've related to your members, but all these other ways. Like I said, getting outside of our comfort zone and seeing if there are opportunities. Are there certain pain points in any of those insurable areas or other areas that maybe if there's a way for your organization, a membership organization, to help somebody with, maybe that really kind of tells you where you can focus some time, energy, and effort. And we already mentioned it, re-examine the value proposition that you have. People may look at the membership experience differently, and you want to make sure that you continue to align it with the current and forward-looking strategies that people are just going to have to see membership in a different light now, and that's okay. You can evolve and change with that. Hopefully you're also reevaluating the marketing and engagement strategies, right? How are we communicating? Are we communicating effectively? Maybe we need to dial back certain marketing so it doesn't look like we're just trying to hit people up when they're probably struggling, but maybe there's now opportunities to market differently if what we're marketing is helping with a serious pain point. And as we already said before, how are we engaging members? Are we still just saying, hey, here's all the stuff that we put out, here's our educational content, here's, are we regurgitating what we did in person just online? Maybe there needs to be a different level or a different component to that engagement strategy. And certainly in the affinity space, examine and re-examine what you're offering your members, because the pandemic may highlight some faults in certain programs, especially if those programs were more dependent on interpersonal relationships, and some of them are more or less electronically successful, or maybe now the need to move something that had more manual components to it to a more virtual experience is critical. To think like an entrepreneur, lean into the tension, lean into the pain, and figure out, all right, how can we make this work so we find that win-win? Like, we're always looking for, like Stephen Covey says. What is this? So whether you've developed an affinity program, had one before, I always feel it's really important to walk through what it looks like to do one well, because I don't want to presume that we all understand what this looks like. So everything should start with a membership analysis, and I want to really clarify what that means. It's not just kind of a, the proverbial member questionnaire, et cetera. A membership analysis that runs through the filter of where are our members, where are they in terms of what they might need or want, and what is the most close level of alignment with our current value proposition, our mission, and our vision. And I'll give you an example as to why that's important, and sometimes that's the critical component that people miss, is that, let's say, just for example, let's say you're a membership organization whose real banner member value proposition centers on advocacy. And there are many out there, but that's really kind of why people join, because they see what you do, whether it's local, national, on Capitol Hill, what have you, and that's really something that they find valuable. Well, just based off of that, even if you were working in an industry that had an insurance need, it might be really at least strange or difficult to land to turn around and say, hey, we understand that you have this insurance need because we know your industry, and we're going to offer you this affinity program to buy insurance through us. While again, it can make sense from a market analysis standpoint, it can land in a very, very, unfortunate way if it really conflicts with how people would normally relate to you. So that's why I say the membership analysis isn't just about identifying those economic opportunities, but doing so and making sure that you weave the value, the vision, the mission, and it all has as much alignment as humanly possible. Otherwise, it can just be received the wrong way, and that can be the stumbling block that makes something that should otherwise work not work, right? But once we have that program consideration, value alignment, what might somebody want to buy? That's critical, but that's only step one. If we find something that our members might want to buy, cyber insurance, business, whatever it is, the other next question is, will they buy from you if you offer it to them? And in some respects, there might still be an opportunity, but the opportunity, if it was offered by you, for example, sometimes, maybe personal home and auto. You might have a ton of members, and everybody that owns a home or has a car, obviously there's this need. So there's this collective massive need if you have a significant individual membership standpoint. But that type of maybe insurance buying consideration, in some respects, people might say it's highly commoditized, and it might not pique somebody's interest, so they might not necessarily even think that just because you're able to offer them some sort of a discount or something with a particular partner, that may not even ingratiate them further to consider it from you. So you just want to, you want to just not find out what might somebody buy, but what will they buy from us? You want to outline a marketing plan, bring in the right partner or partners, and be really key about talking about who's on first, who's responsible for what. Sometimes I see, we get through the first two steps, we have a really good understanding, we've got a really great buyer persona of our members, we've identified a pain point where there's value alignment and considerable interest, and maybe even people have said, hey, I wish you had offered this. So, it looks like if we deliver this, it's going to be successful, but, the organizations that's putting this together, says we're going to develop this and we'll set this up, but they're kind of expecting you or your team or, somebody is going to do a lot of the marketing, and you're looking at them thinking they're going to be doing the marketing. So it's really important that everybody knows who's going to do what to make this work, and that makes sense. Some people, if you may not have, depending on your staff, their capabilities, their understanding, they may not become insurance salespeople overnight. So we want to figure out, just in that partner dynamic, how can everybody win? But if somebody, if you're dealing with a certain partner that's kind of expecting you to do things that maybe are way outside your comfort zone, then that could be an issue. So you want to, find that out. And then also make sure that your plan is at least a 3-year plan. Because, while some programs can see short, immediate success, if you're going to invest in anything, you need to allow it to grow and recognize that it takes time, especially if you're introducing something new. I see a lot of times people set something up and, within, the first 6 months or the first year, they're looking at the provider saying, all right, where's the numbers that are impacting our bottom line? And while in some cases there may be something to show for it, in other cases there may not be. And that, just because it doesn't materialize in the first 12 months doesn't mean it's a failure. That just may be how long it takes to actually get it into the members' minds and get them comfortable with engagements. Make sure you have a long-term plan and you know how to measure it effectively, and we don't just turn around and think, hey, we built it out, we know who's doing it, we've been marketing it online, etc. Where's the money, right? It may take time, right? So play the long game once you implement anything. And what are the keys to making this work? Mentioned it earlier, have a member first mentality. Don't think about what's in it for you, think about what's in it for them. And if what's in it for them can be something you can deliver, that's good. But start with them first and the association or the chamber second. Be sure that you make the critical business argument, because I think a lot of times when you don't see how this really brings value to me, especially if I'm running a small business or I have some kind of an entrepreneurial profession, we are all in that business hat now, and if we're tightening belts, etc., it might be the easiest way to win by making the business argument more effective. But I think sometimes this is a challenge for membership organizations, because we understand how to kind of talk that membership talk, but we need to go beyond that. And again, it's sitting in the shoes of our members so that we can talk and meet them and talk to them in their language. Working with the right partner is absolutely critical. There may be a lot of people out there that can help you do this. You need to work with the people that help you do it well and understand it. And don't place more burden on your shoulders than makes sense. So really, that's, I think, also a big thing if you're evaluating an existing relationship or an existing program, are the partners that are in this program still pulling their weight, still doing what they said they would do, et cetera. That's one of the things that is it's key to be working with the right professionals. Don't sell, educate, and empower. That whether it's Affinity, whether it's just member value in general, educate and empower, and that's the best way to reinforce things. And the bottom line is this: if it's just about non-dues revenue, we might be missing it. But if it's about member success, the non-dues revenue will follow. Make it about winning for your members now and always, and I think you'll see tremendous success. But don't let the financial reality of needing certain non-dues revenues goals cause you to go about this the wrong way. Don't let the proverbial non-dues revenue tail wag the dog. Find out how to make a membership win, and the revenue will follow. I can't say I guarantee it, but 9 times out of 10, both will happen. So hopefully we still have plenty of time. I've seen a lot of stuff in the chat, so I want to thank you for sticking with me. I know I covered a lot of ground and I went pretty fast. Good thing that we have a recording of this. Now I want to make sure that we get time to engage. So might need to bring Amy back in. Let's see. Let's look in the chat.
I am here if you need me.
Yeah, I just want to, I saw a lot of things going in, and I don't want to miss anything. And I saw one question. So
we did have a lot of chatting going on. However, let me see. There was
one in the Q&A is, I don't know which is first, so I'm going to take the bottom one and then I'll move up. Yeah. Are there examples of Affinity programs outside of insurance? Yes. They can be anything from just discount programs to services, essentially anything that you can deliver to a member that, whether it channels directly through you or, it's a vendor partner, hey, a Hertz rental discount. There's a lot of things that, fall under that real broad brush of Affinity. And so because it can be very broad, that's really why the key to that membership analysis is so important, because you've got potentially hundreds of things that you can potentially consider. How do we narrow that landscape the most effectively? that's where we, really get into that membership analysis. And also, what are things that are going to be effectively delivered through your, your organization? Because, sometimes just setting up a bunch of discounts might be nice, but maybe, either there's not enough visibility or people just don't perceive that as valuable. And so you really want it to work, and you want it to be able to have maximum engagement. So hopefully that helps. There just a few examples. There are many things that can fall under Affinity. So I hope that helps. Let's see.
I think so. And one of the things that I've just posted in the chat, and it's probably a little bit dated, but I do think that some of these companies, it's a link to a blog about 114 free, excuse me, 114 free resources for associations and chambers. And it was initially designed to highlight things that were available back in March and April, and some have expired. My instinct is that a lot of these programs have been extended, or these companies also offer affinity programs. I do know that maybe Office Depot or Office Max, there's a lot of stores like that that also have membership programs that I know have helped generate revenue for various organizations.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so that's another thing that, why, working with the right partner and finding the right, target folks to come together is really key. Sometimes you need to also get the right relationships with potential vendor partners. You don't want to just go into an Office Depot nearby, because they, even the store manager may not even have any way to do that. So, getting to the right contacts at certain organizations is key. A lot of times that's why, an organization that specializes in doing this and doing this across a lot of areas is helpful. Whether it's bringing a lot of insurance opportunities on the table, or just having a capacity to deliver on a variety of affinity programs. That's, probably one of the best ways to partner, is to work with somebody that has a big capacity to bring this to you, and kind of almost in a menu say, all right, here's all the things on this large menu. Let's drill in and see what, we might want to be considering. How do I introduce my services to chambers? I'm currently working with 6 chambers. Well, Terry, I don't know necessarily what your services are, but I would think, depending on what it is, if you're thinking of saying that you want to be a potential affinity partner, then I think the conversation should happen, with chamber leaders. I think also maybe GrowthZone can help, because I think that they have some things depending on, again, what it is you're trying to deliver. So, it's the leadership that's going to then extend something. So that's the big thing, for anybody wanting to be a part of this and provide value, is you want to work with the right leaders, and really make sure that there's a mutual win. I do want to kind of say, to speak to caution in, our approach needs to be member first. How are we helping? How are we coming in? I think, and I'm certainly not suggesting anybody was saying this, but sometimes we start to try to offer more things because it seems like an opportune, pain-filled time. And we want to be very careful. We don't want to be tone deaf, right? So we really want to, whatever it is that we're doing, I think the best conversations to be having with either a leader or a member is, what can I do to help? What represents a win to you? And if that's something that I can provide, or I can bring the right parties to the table, or if I can be a part of that solution, then let's talk through that and figure out how we can do that. And I think if you're taking that approach right now, and that's the approach that your partners are taking, that's going to be a fruitful one. So, but
we'll include in the link, Brian wrote an article, and apologies, I don't remember where it was, but he walked through, and kind of took the angle in the article of, making sure you're finding out first what is of value, because it may surprise you, and it could be something that, hasn't crossed your mind, or maybe hasn't been done before. And so finding out first, what would they value? Is it a discount someplace? Is it this? Is it that? I know that a lot of organizations have been, looking at health insurance, offering that, and there's been a lot of different struggles in that regard. But there's a lot of information, and I will put some info out there soon on a blog post on where the status is with that, with some legal issues. But again, I'm going to share the link to his article on how to ask and how to be a friend and how to not sell, but not even demonstrate value, but find out first and then create the value or explain how you can solve the problem.
And I'm seeing some things in here. Good Life, Office Depot is great. That's good. What about Affinity programs for non-US members? Yeah. Frankly, when you're getting into the international dynamic, that's a whole other level. So, you know, that's probably definitely an offline conversation. I'm happy to have, but you know that most of the building blocks for any of that conversation are the same, right? Understanding what represents a win to an international member versus a domestic member, and really making sure that you quantify that, and then that you have the capability to deliver something that's going to work. So, and obviously you need to have a partner that can deliver internationally as well. So, I think that's always an important conversation. Office Depot. Some like it. Some I don't know. I think a lot of programs, as I said earlier, a lot of programs can be really good, but it's not just about the discount. It's really about the engagement with the member. Any program that looks right and delivers value should theoretically work. The question is, do you have a partnership and a model of engaging to allow it to get traction and enough people to experience that value or not? And I think sometimes, it's easy to be fired up and we're getting something off the ground, and then sometimes things grow stale. And it's not because they are no longer valuable. It's just that they kind of fade into the background, right? Or they become that, the best kept secret. You don't want anything to be a best kept secret. You want your secrets to be out in the open and not secrets. You want your members to get value if there is something of value. So, now might not be just about finding something new. It might be just really saying, are we making sure that everything we do really has value and everybody knows about what we do? Sometimes, the best thing you can do is just explore your structure and say, you know what, we've really shifted away from, these two things are very important, but we haven't done a good job of really incorporating into the member experience. Maybe it's just we need to breathe life back into something that's been good, but, has just kind of gone stale for whatever reason, because it just happens. But, if we're not looking at this really strategically and comprehensively, I think we're missing things. So,
one thing that Carrie added in this, to piggyback on what Brian just said is, and maybe it's Kari, I apologize if I'm mispronouncing, in managing our association's affiliate program or affinity program, it will depend on the needs of your members. Just having a popular brand does not equate it to being a successful partnership program if it doesn't meet their needs. And so,
exactly.
That's somebody with experience that's supporting that exact theory. And there's any number of chat groups too. You can find association professionals and chamber professionals that have a lot of chat groups on LinkedIn and Facebook, and you want to talk about ideas and info going back and forth. That's a great resource as well as our blog and our knowledge library.
Yeah, and I did Kari. Why does the U.S. have why do we seem to be so focused on Affinity and other international? I can't speak to that. I can say that once you get outside, obviously the United States, you have just a myriad of different factors, right? Social factors, economic so there's a much different dynamic involved in just even member relations, much less what's valuable in, Denmark versus the US. We're talking about so many different components to society, how they live and breathe and do. So I think that's, just at the highest level view from what I can say, you have in a global dynamic, there are very few global experiences that are the same everywhere. there are a ton of things that are maybe good, but experienced very differently just depending where you are. So I think that that's, part of that. But it doesn't mean that if you're an international organization, you can't do something that's valuable to everybody. It just means you really do have to have a much more in-depth analysis as to what that looks like. And a lot of times, we see a lot of success in the educational space where you're bringing value by equipping other international members there. Sometimes one of the big things that we see as a differentiator is that a lot of, we do, good, bad, or otherwise, we do a lot of educational services in the United States that not everybody else in a global environment necessarily has the same level. And so that's sometimes, tilting the scales to actually get some equilibrium. We've seen a lot of value in that with international groups, but, it just depends on what type of member dynamic you have and how they're going to experience something you might offer to them. Do Affinity program partners usually join chambers? It depends on the chamber, depends on the market. Like anything, is the value proposition there for that partner? And sometimes what you see, depending on the scope of the chamber's membership, you might see more local engagement. You may not necessarily see national engagement because obviously, a national organization like Office Depot's they have to keep things at a high level when they're looking at, broad-based US programs. But, how can you filter or still work with them even if you're regional, local, or, maybe, like the NGLCC, maybe you're the National Game Lesbian Chamber of Commerce where you have a certain demographic component. You just want to, look at that and approach those partners. And guess what? Sometimes, you might find that they just haven't been asked. So often I see local and regional chambers just focused on the businesses that are in the area, but they kind of miss opportunities because they think something's either too big or not a fit. So, have conversations, start to ask. In this kind of environment, a lot of people are really trying to figure out new ways. So at least people are a lot more open to finding opportunities to win. So have the conversation. The worst thing that comes out of a good conversation is nothing, but you had a good conversation anyway. So, be having as many of them as you can and really collaborating well. I think you'll win more often than not.
Agreed. We do have some, we had a lot of customers that we talked with during the spring, and it was amazing using, somebody had said, can GrowthZone help share? And Brian had mentioned that we have some solutions, but there was some programs that people did that weren't necessarily an affinity program, but different techniques they used or different strategies where they were bringing in and generating revenue that was jaw-dropping even for our team. And we do have those on our website. We call them success stories. And, it may not be a perfect fit, but if you go to, it might get an idea going. If you go to the Knowledge Library tab on our webpage, you can drop down to COVID resources and access some of those stories, as well as how people have structured dues to generate revenue or, increase engagement. And, again, we talk about non-dues revenue, but right now we need to make sure that we're holding on to our membership revenue in the long run, because that's been a big hit. So we need both. But by offering value, if it doesn't cost you anything and you can offer that value, it's going to engage in the long run. And that's something that Brian keeps hammering on, is providing that value so you get the engagement, so you get the retention.
Yeah, Lisa just asked something that's really good, and I want to piggyback on what you just said, Amy, and also tackle this, is that, when we find ways to win that are unique, maybe unusual, especially because we have, just this unprecedented, there's that word again, experience that we're all kind of, collectively participating in. When you're able to really come alongside a member or business or person and just help them and be there for them and create an experience, right? That's what this is. We're in the experience economy. So if we create an experience that is just powerful because we're there, even if it results in some kind of an affinity or not, just by the fact that we've walked through that type of experience, that is priceless in terms of retention, in terms of the stickiness of that relationship. Because what you did, people know when you're going outside your comfort zone to really be there for them. So I cannot understate the value of that right now. And in whatever meaningful way that that can be accomplished, do it. Now, Lisa's question about people saying they don't want to discount their products or services, that may be fair. And frankly, you know, some organizations may not be in a situation where they can do that much. I think there are two ways to respond to that. It doesn't necessarily mean you have to dismiss them, but it goes back to that, you know, that point I made earlier. Figure out what could represent a win to them, because, you know, and especially if there's agreed that whatever they might be providing is really valuable and wanted and necessary, even if it didn't involve kind of a discount. Like, there can still be ways for organizations to win. Maybe instead of a discount, it's, you know, free shipping, or, you know, I don't know what that is. I don't know what the specific scenario is, but I'd still have that conversation, because if they're there and they're wanting to be engaged, you know, we can, you know, still figure out if there's that win-win, and maybe there's not, and that's okay. And maybe that tells you to move on. I think the other thing though is, you know, how do you not necessarily push back, but recognize that if you really build something well, that you can still make a considerable amount more money, even if there's a certain discount, assuming that it can be delivered effectively. And so much about winning when people don't and may not be able to do much discounting is about delivery and process, and, you know, a really thorough market analysis. Because a lot of times, you know, why is kind of the obvious answer. Why would an organization, insurance company, anybody want to work with a membership organization? Because they get the benefit of what you've already developed, this captive audience of members that they would take, you know, they may take a lot more time, energy, effort, and money to you know, penetrate that market on their own. So there's still, you know, we still have to figure out how that can work. So, you know, my suggestion is lean into it, have the conversation, try to figure out if there is a win-win. If there's not, that's okay. You know, I mean, this is a new dynamic for us. So not everybody can maybe do what they used to be able to do, and that's fine. But I still think they will feel better about the fact that you still try to find a win for them anyway, and they might be able to still come back. You know, maybe they'll still want to. Maybe they'll be a vendor. Maybe they don't want to do a discount, but they might still be willing to, you know, support your organization virtually or advertise virtually or something like that. So,
Can you weigh in on this one? That there's a lot of great questions, but I just know that this is in your wheelhouse. Somebody talked about 401ks, offering 401ks.
Yeah.
And I know that Brian is passionate about
Sure.
retirement financial advising. So maybe you could just quickly give us an overview on that, and maybe we can follow up with you later.
Yeah,
to explain more about it.
I will touch the high level. I'll give you a couple really important pieces on that. And yes, please, I'd love to talk to anybody that wants to have that conversation in detail offline. But retirement right now is probably one of the biggest opportunities. And again, it's not insurance. It's something that, frankly, guess what? Every single person. So I think there's a few likely things. I think it's not two things. I think there are three things that happen to everybody: death, taxes, and retirement. So retirement's number three. You heard it here first, if you didn't already know that. So retirement, it will happen one of two ways, right? We will either choose it or it will choose us. So it's a great opportunity right now, that especially in certain markets where setting up a plan, so setting up a plan itself, for anybody that's ever gone through this in some degree, it's not like opening up a bank account, right? It's not an uncomplicated process. Depending on, you know, what you're trying to do and how you're building it out, it takes time. It does take money because there's usually a hard dollar cost, because, you know, there's a regulatory component to it and all that. So it's something that sometimes certain industries, certain businesses, et cetera, just don't either want to do or hand it off to their payroll because they're told that they can just do it and make it easy and slap it in there, check the box. But the reality now is, you know, really retirement plan is probably one of the biggest benefits you can provide outside of medical insurance. So if it's an opportunity where you have a group based on an industry that may have this need, or even if they have plans, might benefit from really, a group buying experience that could bring the cost of that down, make the delivery of that more easier, more effective, take some of the burdens off of the receiving organization, right? The administrative headache and the compliance, the fiduciary components. If there's a way to package that up and deliver it, man, can that be a huge win. And I think I want to go back to where a big opportunity is. If there are membership organizations or business types that have varying degrees of full-time and part-time, and usually at times it's not necessarily technical or blue collar or what have you. This can just be companies that really struggle to have this kind of traditional full-time employee dynamic, or maybe they have shifting or seasonal or what have you. A lot of times those types of businesses don't tend to want to do retirement just because of how complex it is, not because it wouldn't be valuable. It's too much. So if you were able to look at this and say, hey, maybe if we can package something up and deliver it to you where we can almost make this a turnkey thing, it would be below market costs because we're bringing some buying power to the table. You get with the right vendor. One of the ones that our firm works with the most is Fidelity. Fidelity is the #1 retirement plan provider in the marketplace. You can find some really good partners, and all of a sudden that could be a huge opportunity to bring member value. So I have especially seen it, and again, like I said, I'm trying to describe certain industry types, or even in a chamber dynamic where maybe you've got a lot of 1 to 4 person firms. I don't like the term mom and pop, but I think you understand what I'm saying, where it's one of these things where it's the business owner, I say that'd be nice to have, but I just haven't done it for fill in the blank reasons, which is usually not because they shouldn't do it. It's just, man, it's a heavy lift. So yes, retirement is a big opportunity. I think probably one of the biggest growth areas, not just in Affinity, but in improving kind of your benefit experience in general. And it's certainly something that I think you can have a good conversation about with a lot of things. Like I said, this is not industry specific. The 3 new things, right? So everybody's got to be figuring this out. And we've all been exposed financially, maybe our savings, we've had to tap into retirement, all that kind of stuff. So having this be a good thing that you can offer from an employer to employee, and also maybe being able to deliver value from a membership organization to members, big opportunity. So maybe longer winded answer, but happy to also give details.
That's great. That's great. And we will include links to everything that we can, and we will summarize the chat and include a link to that information. I know a lot of people would like to see it. We have gone past, but everybody has certainly done, Brian has done a great job, and I really appreciate how engaged everyone has been. This has been really enlightening. So thank you to Brian for joining us, and that's Brian Haney with the Haney Group, who is also very involved with ASAE. And additionally, thank you to everybody who joined us. I want to remind you that if you'd like a high-level overview of the GrowthZone software, particularly how you can leverage it for affinity programs and non-dues, generating non-dues revenue, it's easy, low pressure, no pressure, live online group demo. So that's available at growthzone.com. And so join it. And we also have a lot of blog posts and a lot of knowledge library things that address some of the things that we have talked about. So the recording should be out hopefully in the next 24 hours. Look for that in your inboxes. And again, we are always looking for ideas on webinars that would be helpful and powerful in supporting your mission and your organization. So thanks to Brian Haney. Thanks to everyone for joining us. And we wish you a great rest of the week and have a wonderful weekend, and keep us in the loop on how things are going for your organization. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Amy.
Yeah, bye.